Really appreciate that you take your time from all the wonderful events to be here. Is this your first time in El Salvador? It's my first time. Great, okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I'm assuming you all love it too. Yeah, so my talk today is about Bitcoin aligning incentives. So I talk about a lot of things online, mostly Bitcoin, of course, lots of different vantage points, perspectives, hopefully many of them interesting, but today's a little different, I suppose. And I suppose I'm doing that because here in El Salvador, I feel that this is something that's especially touching to where we are. It's especially touching to where we are in this moment in history, or at least I think so. And I think it's really important to talk about. So what I've really enjoyed about being here in El Salvador so much thus far is just the beauty, natural beauty, the food, the people, the culture. You know, obviously, the last 2 days we've been stuck in this hotel, but I spent a few days in El Zante. We're going there later tonight again. So I really loved it. And to me, it emphasizes that the things that we really value in life are not the numbers that we call money. They're not the number of units or currency or whatever. It's the stuff that is what we use to consume. It's what we use to eat. It's our time. It's our family and our loved ones. And so to me, that's the hope with Bitcoin. It's not just a new series of numbers, but that it can help enable more of that prosperity, more of that absolute purchasing power. So I'm going to compare fiat and Bitcoin, why I think Bitcoin's set of numbers is more moral and more fair and more equal. So essentially, if we all want those things, if we all want that prosperity for ourselves, for our future selves, for our children, we all want to be able to communicate those numbers and communicate to each other what is valuable to us, right? It's the way in which we communicate what's valuable to each other. And so obviously barter was the main system in which we did that until obviously then we had to find a way to have an increased amount of scarcity in order to communicate what is relatively abundant in terms of that. And so what we did, my example here, what we did is we created political currency. I've got a $100 US bill and 100 Venezuelan bolivars, right? So these are political currencies. These are sets of numbers, ones and zeros, and I would argue that this is a technological innovation. A lot of Bitcoiners, think that this is, evil and, dust or whatever, worthless, and I agree, but at the same time, this is, in my opinion, a technological innovation. This is better than just going out and bartering and hoping that we have, coincidence of once that we want the same thing. And so this is what we had for a very, very long period of time. We have to have something that's more abstract and more scarce than things in real life. And so the only thing more scarce than things in our real life are numbers. And so what we do is we create a board of people or an individual or group of individuals that creates a set of numbers, and they say, these are the numbers that are scarce, right? And we trade those for the things that we actually care about. It's not the numbers, it's the things we actually care about. And so my coming to Bitcoin journey, let's say, my understanding of Bitcoin was really realizing that this is an innovation, yes, in comparison to the past or hunter-gatherer days, farming days, and all that, but it's really archaic. It really has this fundamental technological flaw that up to this point in history we've not been able to figure out yet. And that is the problem of conflicting interests. And that's why I believe Bitcoin solves, which I'll get to in a minute. But the problem here is that if you have an entity, if you have a group of people that are defending the scarcity of these numbers, well then simultaneously you've created two different classes, two different tiers. You have the people that are the creators and the managers and the distributors of the numbers, and then you have the users of the numbers, everyone else. And so inherently, fundamentally, built into the technological system itself, you have these two competing forces that are always going to be in conflict with each other perpetually into the future. The people, I'm an American, obviously. How many of you are Americans in here, right? That you actually use dollars? Okay, yeah, so a good number of you. So for me, for example, I'm over here in America with my American political currency units, my ones and zeros that we create. I'm very close to the creators of our numbers. And then I come down here to El Salvador, as many of you Americans, lots of people here from Europe, a few of you from Asia, all over the world coming down here. And our numbers are worth more here. So that is essentially a form of theft, right? In that I am a perpetrator of this theft, and I'm also a victim, because I'm not the one that creates the numbers. I'm not the very foundation or choke point. So I am both a victim and a perpetrator, right? And I think that's how we all are, that we don't have an alternate set of numbers because this is the best we have, or it's the best we've had up to this point. And so if I think, when I was thinking about, okay, where does this all lead? Where does this go? To me, I looked at history and it became clear that, we keep getting to the same end result. We keep coming to the similar, very limited set of outcomes. that seem basically inevitable, and I would argue because it's a systemic flaw in the technology. If I am on the side of creating the numbers and distributing the numbers, and you are on the side of receiving the numbers, well then inherently there's only one of two ways this can end, right? Either I keep creating more numbers and I can no longer acquire your stuff, or we bring out the guns, because that's really what backs the money. That's really what backs it. If you have a central group of power enforcing the scarcity of those numbers, what defends that? It's the barrel of a gun, right? So to me, those are the only two ways in which these things end, and I think history speaks to that very well. That either we keep creating the numbers perpetually, hyperinflation, or we no longer agree on those numbers and we resort to war. We resort to the energy that backs those numbers, which is the barrel of a gun. So I look at where we are today, I think about myself as an American, and all of us as Americans in here. We come from America over 80 years. You know, we've had the dominant series of numbers in the world, like many others before us, but simultaneously, we know that they also trend to bolivars over time. The only question is timing, right? If I am perpetually incentivized to create these numbers, then my incentive is not in the best interest of your incentive. And so, to me, when I look at that problem, I think, okay, most people are attributing these tensions and these misalignments and these failures of misaligned incentive structures, they're attributing it to conspiracy theories or to bad politicians or the system or the courts or this country or that country or this or that. And while that's all true, and perhaps at varying degrees of correctness, I think it's a much more fundamental problem. I think fundamentally, the reason why Bitcoiners are so passionate about Bitcoin is because they understand that this is not a Republican or Democrat or a communist versus or a fascist or democracy or monarchy. You know, these are all different manifestations of the same technological problem. We've not had a way to distribute numbers that we call money in an effective way where there's no central point in control. And so I think it's fundamentally a technological problem, which is much more subtle and much more nuanced than just wanting to blame a different ethnicity or a different country or a different politician or the person or the group that you don't like. I think it's more subtle than that, but I think it's far more concerning and far more devastating because of the inevitability of it. It's just game theory. It's just fundamental base layer reality. It's not some lever that can just be pulled in your direction. Now everything's magically fixed from the top down. It's a fundamental technological failure from the bottom up. And that's why I think Bitcoin's really important. Because I think there are only two solutions. Like I said before, this ends in one of two results, either hyperinflation or war. But I think there's only one of two solutions. The first solution is all humans become moral, right? All humans become without sin. All humans have perfect hearts forever in time, right? Kumbaya, right? So basically, we have a group of people in charge of the numbers, and we all say, you know, we're never going to increase the number of currency units. I'm never going to pretend that I'm a monetary god and create numbers out of thin air in exchange for your real goods, your real services, and your real labor at my direct benefit, at your direct expense. That's theft, right? And so that's not going to happen, right? Everyone obviously knows that that's not going to happen. So the only other possible solution, because we're in that fallen world, the only other possible solution I can conceive of is finding a technological improvement to this. In the same way that fiat currency, aka by decree, with the barrel of a gun, of course, fiat is an innovation on barter, but likewise, the only solution to this technological problem, in my view, is finding a technological solution, and that's Bitcoin. You know, the cypherpunks and the computer geeks would call it the double spend problem. You know, economists would call it a different problem. You know, we can call it whatever we want, but fundamentally, I think Bitcoin is a technological fix to this technological problem. Because now, as an American, right now, my incentive with my political currency is to acquire it as fast as possible, as soon as it's minted, as soon as it's created, faster than the kids here in El Salvador, right? You know, we've gone out, we've gone to the beaches, we've gone around town the last few days here, we've met lots of locals. You know, my incentive is right now to be as close to that money printer as possible. And so I don't really care from a incentive game theory perspective. I don't really care what their incentive is because it's not necessarily aligned. And so I believe the only way to remedy that, the only way to fix that, the only way to work together in that sense is to have that technological solution.